Hiya, Barbie.
Hi, Ken.
You wanna go do a podcast?
Sure.
Jump in.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barbies and Kens, Kellys of all ages, and everyone else, welcome to Binging Barbie, a Barbie movie podcast. I'm your host, Jay, and with me I have my wonderful co-host. Just to set the record straight, he does wash his clothes. John.
That's a lie.
For those of you just joining us, we are a podcast about Barbie movies. Every week we watch one of the straight-to-DVD animated Barbie movies and we rate its story, characters, animation, voice acting, and music to see how it stacks up. This week we will be talking about the 8th animated Barbie movie, and the first set in a modern setting, the Barbie Diaries.
Woohoo.
Indeed. This was released April 30th, 2006 on Nickelodeon, followed shortly by a DVD release on May 9th. And it was directed by Eric Fogel, who this is his first Barbie movie, and actually the only Barbie movie he's worked on.
Mm-hmm.
He was primarily an animated TV writer, director, and producer. He worked on Daria and Celebrity Deathmatch, among others. And after this movie, he didn't direct again until 2014. Whether this movie had anything to do with that, I don't know. I just thought it was kind of interesting given this movie's reputation. This is the first Barbie movie not produced by Mainframe Studios. It was produced by Curious Pictures, who they did a bunch of animation and VFX work. Most relevant to this one, they did some of the My Scene movies. And because this is a different studio, it actually has a completely different animation style.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the first thing you notice, and it's not yeah. It doesn't work at all for what it needs to be.
No.
And that's a lot of this movie's reputation is this animation style. But it was written by Elise Allen, who's returning from the Fairytopia movies, and Laura McCreary, who is a prolific TV comedy writer who did work on Kim Possible, American Dad, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Fresh Off the Boat. So pretty well.
That makes so much sense.
Did you recognize some of the humor style?
Like I just thought that there was some really good dialogue in here that wasn't part of the main conversation, but just throwaway jokes, and they were good. And so hearing this, it makes sense because Kim Possible, very witty.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine as well has a very good reputation. She also worked on the short-lived show Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23, and that was the show that introduced Kristen Ritter, who plays Jessica Jones. That was her big breakout, and is a very well-regarded sitcom, even though it only lasted, I believe, 1 or 2 seasons. But yeah, this is Laura McCreary's only Barbie movie that she worked on, so...
There are probably reasons for that.
Yeah, I don't think the main problems with this movie are her fault.
No.
But...
if anything, she probably brought it up.
This time we have music by Russ DeSalvo and Peter Schwartz. DeSalvo also worked on a few later Barbie movies, but neither of them did much work in the Barbie cinematic universe. And we do have original songs in this movie. Playing the voice of Barbie, we have Canadian singer Sky Sweetnam, who provided both the voice and several songs. And she was kind of an up-and-coming star at this point, though she never got as big as people maybe expected. She released several albums throughout the 2000s and is currently the lead singer for Sumo Psycho. And then, in addition to these songs by Sky Sweetnam, we also have songs performed by a pre-fame Kesha, Lucy Woodward, and others. And just kind of related, though not directly, after this movie, Mattel and the Australian record label Shock Records actually put together a real-life band named Charms, based on this movie.
Mm-hmm.
made up of 4 Australian teenage girls, and they released an album in October of 2006, so 6 months after this movie came out, and I believe they covered some of the songs in the movie. So yeah, the music is a big part of this movie. It isn't quite a musical, but as in the characters aren't necessarily directly singing about their situations.
It's a big part.
Yeah.
When they do it.
Yeah. So the story this time around, again, I mentioned earlier on, this is the first Barbie movie set in the modern day. Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty standard teen movie.
Yeah.
Like totally. It hits all of the tropes.
It does. Very much so.
Yeah, even sometimes to its detriment. It's very clearly inspired by Clueless and especially Mean Girls.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Mean Girls came out 2004, so 2 years before this movie came out, and Barbie Diaries lifts entire character arcs from Mean Girls. It's not like a subtle reference. It is a very direct pastiche of that movie. And that is, to jump into it, I think that is the biggest problem with this story, is that the best parts of it are pretty good. They're just not from this movie. And to be fair, so just a little bit of background. I stumbled backwards into doing quite a bit of research for this episode this week because I've been on a bit of a teen movie kick. So in the last week, I've watched Princess Diaries and I watched Clueless, and then yesterday I watched Mean Girls for the first time.
Okay.
And immediately after, I was like, oh, now I have to watch Barbie Diaries, so I watched that. So I went from Mean Girls, which is a really well-made and well-written movie that is arguably one of the best movies of the 21st century so far.
Okay.
To Barbie Diaries, which is doing a lot of the same things, but with less nuance and less complexity. Mm-hmm. So if I am a bit harsh on the story, I think part of it is that since I watch these two movies so close to each other, I am maybe judging it a bit more harshly than I might otherwise.
I don't remember much about Mean Girls. I just know Lindsay Lohan.
Yep, Lindsay Lohan, Rachel McAdams.
Right. And it had the trio that I was guessing from last week.
Yes, this movie also has has 2 trios of characters just like Mean Girls.
Yeah, but not quite the way I predicted it.
Yeah. And we can get into that in a sec. I do want a quick run through the story for anyone who hasn't seen this. Barbie is entering her sophomore year. She's not one of the popular kids at her school. Mm-hmm. And there's kind of this very clear divide in the movie between the popular kids, who are called the populazzi. Yeah. Not a very good or easy to say word. Mm-hmm. And then there's everyone else, and Barbie and her friends belong to this everyone else group. Mm-hmm. But Barbie happens to have a crush on the most popular girl in the school, her boyfriend. So when the most popular girl inevitably breaks up with him, then Barbie makes her move and then gets involved in all of this drama. And then at the same time, she's both in a band with her 2 best friends, and they're going to be playing at the fall formal. Mm-hmm. So the sort of school event. So there's that subplot. And then there's also Barbie is working for the school's TV news station, which is somewhat odd that a school would have a TV news station, but maybe schools do. I'm not.
I mean, we tried once.
Yeah.
It didn't work out.
But in this news station, Barbie's trying to become an anchor.
They had professional equipment, too.
Yeah. This school is, and we'll get into it a bit later, I think, this school is not in a less wealthy neighborhood.
Of course. If it's Malibu Barbie, then.
Yeah.
It's Malibu.
But yeah, but Barbie's trying to become an anchor for this news station.
Mm-hmm.
And so she starts this story. And initially it is, why are the popular kids popular? But then it turns into this expose. And eventually all of these different plot lines sort of crumble, and Barbie has to kind of own up to everything she's done and all of the mistakes she's made. And then there's also this subplot about a diary that may or may not be granting her wishes.
Yeah, sure. And there's a character that completely disappears.
Yeah. And so the stuff that's ripped off from Mean Girls is almost entirely to do with Barbie's plotline. Because the plot of Mean Girls is this girl who was homeschooled her whole life moves to this new school and immediately sort of falls in with the outsider group. By chance, one day, she then makes it in with the popular girls, the Plastics, and sort of starts to sabotage them. But over the course of the movie, she sort of becomes more and more like them. The message of Mean Girls is sort of this critique of the divide between sort of the popular kids and the unpopular kids, and how the outsider kids often feel sort of, oh, we're better than the populars. But in Mean Girls, the unpopular kid becomes a popular kid and is just as bad as the popular kids. And this movie kind of does that, but it just doesn't have the nuance or the complexity that Mean Girls does.
Right. There are so many subplots in this film.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of them are just kind of like checking off the teen movie tropes. And there isn't anything done to like plus the material. I think the one thing that could have been interesting is this diary, where we're supposed to think that it is granting Barbie's wishes, and then in the end wonder if it really is or not.
Right, but like the diary thing is only brought up within the third half of the film.
Yeah, it isn't even. I don't think it even shows up for the first 30 minutes, and this is a 70-minute movie.
Right.
And even when it does show up, it's not really the focus.
No, she's just like, oh, the diary. And then out of nowhere, I think this diary and this bracelet is magic.
Yeah, there isn't a clear connection made between what she's writing in the diary and what's happening because of it. Like when she says, oh, I think this diary is fulfilling my wishes, you're like, really?
I wasn't paying attention. What were you writing down? I was following the story mostly well, and then they brought in the magic arc, and it's like, wait, what? Now? We're almost done, and we're doing this now? What? What's this? This Stephanie girl who worked at the shop, who was very generous and gave free stuff, is nowhere to be found. But her bully friend knows Stephanie, and she's just gone.
Yeah. It could have been the most interesting element of the movie.
Sure.
To sort of be about the titular Barbie diary, to have this like Barbie finds this diary that grants her wishes, and then have the same ambiguity about if it's actually magic or if it's just Barbie making these false connections.
Which it seems like at the end it was.
Yeah, which I like the ambiguity, but I think that should have been the focus rather than taking its plot entirely from Mean Girls. You know, use this unique element that they have as a central plot point rather than a subplot.
Yeah. I mean, the diary shows up so late in the film that when it does, it's like, oh, right, this film is called The Barbie Diaries. Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, and it doesn't even pay off that, like, you would think, because the bracelet is the key to the diary.
Right.
Which, side note, is probably a very, like, there's probably a product that you could buy.
You don't remember those? Those commercials were everywhere. Like having those diaries, like, oh, you can unlock it with a charm, or you can have voice activated. Like they happen all the time on TV commercials back in the 2000s. I remember seeing them so much that, like, seeing in this film, it's like, oh, it's this. I remember these. I thought they were so cool, but I never got one.
Yeah. I mean, I do remember the, like, charm bracelet ones, but I don't
Yeah.
remember a specific Barbie one, but I'm sure there was
Oh,
one based on the fact that it's in this
definitely.
movie.
Definitely. They're advertising it here. It's gotta be here.
But yeah, someone gets her magic bracelet that unlocks the diary and never reads her diary.
Yeah, like there's a moment where it's like, hey, that's my bracelet. Like, oh yeah, prove it. I'm just waiting. It's like, oh, there's the diary. No one steals the diary to read her embarrassing thoughts. It's just, there's a lot of subverting expectations, but not in the same way of Magic of Pegasus. Where
Yeah.
Magic of Pegasus was like, oh, we've had all these tropes in all these films. Let's do something else. Here it's like, there's all these plot lines that are predictable and obvious and that should go this direction. Let's just not. And just leave it there.
Yeah, it's reverse Chekhov's guns. It's someone puts a loaded gun on the stage in the first act, and then it just sits there unused for the rest of the play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're setting up these ideas with the diary.
All the while,
then
characters are keep pointing out the gun.
Yeah.
Throughout the show.
And the title of the play is The Loaded Shotgun. Yeah. Although that might be a bit artistic. Here it feels like they're missing the diary. It feels like someone watched Mean Girls and was like, oh, let's do that as a Barbie movie. And then someone over at marketing said, hey, we've got this new diary toy. Can you integrate it? And they're like, okay. And then we ended up with this.
It really feels like they were writing this and they had so many ideas, but then they just forgot.
Yeah.
Like I do this sometimes when writing. So it's plausible. But
yeah.
Still.
Well, one of the other issues with the story is that at no point do I buy that Barbie and her friends aren't popular.
Right, because it's only the three girls who are like, oh no, we don't like you.
Yeah, and there is no... Usually in these teen movies, there is some quality or trait that makes the protagonist stand out from the popular people.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, oh, maybe they were homeschooled, like in Mean Girls, or maybe they're, like, in the drama club, or maybe
they're in a band.
They're in a band. And here they are in a band, but that's not brought up at school until this fall formal. It doesn't feel like it's definitional to them as a friend group. And beyond that, like, they wear the same clothes. As far as I can tell, they're all about the same wealth status. They act very similarly. They're always on cell phones or putting up makeup in class.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the band is the only major thing that distinguishes them. But again, that isn't really a big part of their school lives.
No.
So when Barbie and her friends are sort of talking about, oh, that's the popular lawn, we can't go there. It's like, why not? There's no real difference. And maybe it's somewhat intentional, but the movie doesn't call that out. It's never like, oh, we're not so different from the popular people, why aren't we allowed to be popular? It's just kind of treated as, well, that's the way that all of the other teen movies do it, so...
Yeah.
And there is a little bit with Barbie's arc in the movie about how, okay, maybe she isn't so different from these popular kids. But, again, it doesn't solve this core issue, which is that at no point in the movie do you buy that Barbie and her friends wouldn't be able to fit in with the popular group.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Barbie fits, like, there's a moment where she fits in with the popular kids, but it's, like, not because she did anything popular. She's just like, oh yeah, I got this cool thing. It's elementary school popularity, where if you get the cool toy, like the bracelet or the highlighter with the lip gloss, then you're the popular kid, because you have the cool item. Where here, they're in high school. That's not how popularity is earned.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered that, how the popularity works there. And I mean, this is a movie for younger girls who aren't in high school. But if you're gonna do that, I feel like there's a level of intentionality that needs to go in it.
Right.
Whereas here, it feels like a lot of these story decisions are being made because other teen movies make those same decisions.
I really feel like this should have been a show, because I could see it being a show. Just watching it, I feel like I'm watching episodes of Hannah Montana, watching this film, and like there's so many plot elements going on. I'm thinking this would work as a show because there's so many plot ideas to work with.
Yeah, I mean, you could have an episode where Barbie and the band are going to perform and now they need to practice, but Barbie's too busy doing something else. And then you could have a different episode about the highlighter lip gloss thing.
And the boy that likes Barbie.
Yeah.
Nick.
I think it's Kevin.
Yeah. Nick is the actor. Matt is the actor. Who's Nick?
These are all very common names. I feel like they would all fit the character.
There's no Nick. Okay, well then.
Now, there are moments I do like in this story that are unique to this movie. Because overall, the story, I think, works well. It's just that it's working well because it's drawing from other better movies, specifically from Mean Girls.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't really give the creators of this movie credit for making that story work, because I actually think the changes that they make often make it so that the story works less well.
Mm-hmm.
But the moments that I like the scene where they're washing the dishes and they end up in a food fight. I think it's a good relief of tension, because the scenes before have been Barbie's friends sort of feeling betrayed by Barbie, and her attempts to get in with the popular crowd are really messing with her friends' lives. And so there needs to be this moment of them just letting all that tension out and having this sort of comedic food fight scene. And then it's right after that they find out they've been accepted to perform at the fall formal. I do also really like the scenes of Barbie being called out by both the popular girls and her friends for screwing them over and betraying them.
Yeah, it's not like it's either them or us. They're both bad.
And that, that we'll get into this with the characters, but this is the most flawed Barbie protagonist we've seen. And that the movie isn't afraid to call that out. I do also like the movie nights. I think those are a little nice touch to the romance between Barbie and Kevin. And the dialogue, as you were saying, there's some good dialogue here. It does have some bad phrases. I think the popularazzi, and there's a different one, Rorfed, which is a combination of wreck and morph. It's like
trying to make their own slang.
Yeah, but it doesn't work. It's very much a stop trying to make fetch happen type of thing. The attempts to make up their own slang don't quite work out.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I think the dialogue, moment to moment, is good.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pointed out that the comedy writer also worked in Kim Possible. Because I really felt like the chemistry between Barbie and Kevin just seemed really similar to that of Kim and Freddie, the other guy.
I haven't seen the show, so I
Okay,
wouldn't.
well, the other guy, the main guy,
Yeah.
him with the mole rat. But I didn't write that down because, like, I'm probably reaching. But now that I see it's the same writer, it's like, okay, I'm not reaching. There is a similarity.
Yeah, I think those are the moments that land the best, where the plot is kind of in the background.
Right, when it's just the characters just talking about
Yeah.
average things, I like the most because they felt natural, realistic. But then, like, when we got to actual plot stuff, it's like, okay. This is a very 2000s film. My goodness.
Yeah.
Just watching it, it's like, oh my gosh, yes, 2000s. I remember this. The
Yeah.
designs, all the stuff. I miss it.
Yeah, there is a little bit of nostalgia for me
Mm-hmm.
as well, to like,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe I've seen parts of this movie as a kid,
Okay.
but I don't remember much of it. This isn't one of the ones my family owned.
Of course, this one's not easy to find.
No, it is not. We had to jump through some hoops to watch this one.
Yeah, the version I watched had some audio syncing problems. So
Mine had ghostly subtitles across the bottom of the screen.
nice.
But yeah, overall the plot here, again, if I hadn't watched Mean Girls, I think I would have a higher opinion of this plot. But since it's borrowing so much, I just feel like I can't give it a very high score. So maybe that's a bit unfair. I mean, this isn't the first Barbie movie to borrow plot elements from other stories, though this one isn't directly based off of anything, unlike a lot of the Barbie movies. And I just think the way it borrows these elements doesn't add to them, and it doesn't find a way to plus the material.
Right.
So I gave it a 2 out of 5 overall for the story.
I gave it a 2 as well. Not because of that, but more so because there were just so many plot elements going on that I just had no idea what the main plot of the story was until the end of the film, which is not how you want things to go. Like, you want to be able to think about, like, I can't even think about what the plot is right now. It's so muddied by all this side stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of subplots.
It's a 2. I mean, I like the dialogue. I like some of the stuff, but story is what we're looking at here, and that's a 2.
Yeah.
If we were still doing writing, I'd give writing a higher score.
Yeah, I think this is one of the few movies where, for me as well, the writing and the story scores would be significantly different. Which is why we got rid of the writing category. Anyway, on to characters. Our protagonist here is Barbie, just Barbie. She doesn't have any other name here. She is, as I said before, the most flawed protagonist we've seen so far. Where all of the other Barbie protagonists, like, they might mess up every once in a while.
This one is fully messing up. She is Hannah Montana.
Yeah.
And the Mean Girls.
Yeah, she's very much Katie from Mean Girls. And she has an interesting arc here, because she finds out she actually cares about being popular to some extent. And that she's willing to do things like gossip about her own friends to maintain that popularity. And then throughout the story, she needs to learn to think about her friends instead of her own interests and her own. Even her romantic subplot has a lot of that, where she's kind of screwing off her friends to follow her crush around.
Yeah. Todd.
Yeah. who's we'll talk about Todd.
That's a phrase. I wouldn't call him that, but sure.
No. But again, so I like Barbie's arc here, but once again it's lifted directly from Mean Girls, and it's done with less complexity and with less nuance. So I don't know if I can really give the movie points for that. Because what it's
I
doing right isn't something that it is bringing to the table. It's something that it has borrowed from a different movie and is presenting to us in a different package.
I don't have any thoughts about a lot of the characters. I'm just the plot is the main thing you're focused on. Unlike the other Barbie films where characters really shine, here all the characters fit their role of being a teenager in high school.
Yes.
And that was the only thing I could think of any of them. I'm like, they're just teenagers in high school. They act like it. They talk like it. I have nothing to say about them. Really.
And the thing about teen movies is they live or die by their supporting characters. Like, the plot and the protagonists are very important, but having compelling supporting characters is incredibly important to the success of the story. You think of any good teen movie, you have Clueless, you have Mean Girls, you have Lady Bird, you have Perks of Being a Wallflower. It's the supporting characters who tie the story together and who give it the personality that it has. And in this movie, the supporting characters are just kind of there.
Yeah, I mean, they're nice when they're with Barbie, but they're mostly just partially, I don't know.
They're window dressing. They're just kind of
they're like they're Kevin's wingmen, essentially. Yeah, like they're Kevin's supporting character more than Barbie's, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about the same.
But even beyond just Barbie's friends, even the rest of the supporting cast, and I think especially the antagonists, don't have as much complexity or as much characterization as they need.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to bring it up again, but I just watched it yesterday before watching this movie. Mean Girls has an incredible amount of empathy towards its antagonists, to the extent that it almost makes the antagonists more sympathetic than the protagonist. And that works so well for what that movie is trying to say. Whereas here, the antagonists are just shallow and vain, and there isn't much to them. We don't understand why they are that way, or what drives them. Like, there's this throwaway line about how Raquel, who's the main popular girl, used to be friends with Barbie, but that never pays off.
What? They were?
Yeah. Which usually in this kind of story, that's a setup towards they're gonna reveal that this enemy is actually like longing to still be friends with Barbie, or they're gonna add some level of complexity to it and redeem that villain. But here, they don't at all. The last we see of Raquel, she tears her dress with the bracelet that she stole from Barbie, and then gets punch spilled all over her.
Mm.
There's no complexity or redemption to that character.
Raquel's just your traditional bully girl. There's nothing special about her, except she's there to be annoying and to bring conflict to Barbie.
Yeah. And I don't know, because these Barbie movies sometimes have a level of complexity that you don't expect. But here there's nothing going on beneath Raquel's surface.
No.
She isn't a deeper character than what is presented to us. And especially with this line, it's somewhat of a throwaway line, but it's still there, that she and Barbie used to be friends. Like, I want to hear about that. I want to hear why they used to be friends, why they are no longer friends, and what it would take for them to become friends again.
Yeah, and she has her own lackeys, Ridgen and Dawn.
Yep, Reagan and Dawn.
Yeah, yeah. So going to what I had said the last episode, talking about my predictions. Typically, teen movies for villains, you have three characters. You have the leader, the sarcastic one, and the dumb one. Here you have Raquel and the other two. The other two don't fit any of the sarcastic or dumb slots. They're just there.
Yeah, they aren't even distinguishable from each other.
One's Asian.
Yeah, but that's the only thing that, like, as characters, they don't serve different roles in the plot or in relation to Raquel.
They're the same.
It's the kind of thing of, especially since this is a movie that was made and marketed with young girls in mind, to have three of your named characters in this movie be presented as sort of shallow and vain and gossipy and never have anything pay off from that. Yeah.
But it's also like the sidekicks, Reagan, and Dawn. They have slightly better character designs than Raquel. At least more distinct, slightly.
Yeah.
Like, Dawn has an army jacket. Why? I don't know. But I noticed that. She has this little logo on the side that's a rank. I can't remember which one, but it's there. It's a choice. I don't remember anything from Raquel.
She has, like, light pink hair.
What?
That's about the only distinguishing.
Okay.
Like very light strawberry blonde. Yeah, I think the only supporting character who stands out is Kevin.
Kevin?
Who's sort of the classic boy next door who...
Yeah.
We know Barbie's gonna end up with him from moment one.
Mm-hmm. And it's just waiting for Barbie to finally see it.
Yeah. And I think, at least in the start of the movie, he doesn't necessarily see it himself. Though maybe he does. I don't know. So sometimes teen movies play it different ways.
It's hard to say, because he's just flirty in general.
Yeah.
At least in the beginning. He was flirty in the way he talks.
Yeah, and I do like his dynamic with Barbie.
Yeah.
And I like that he is also a character outside of his relationship with Barbie.
Mm-hmm.
That he has this interest in filmmaking that then becomes relevant to the plot.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the early romantic leads in these movies felt sort of flat and just there to be the romantic lead, whereas Kevin actually feels like a character. Even more so than pretty much any character in this movie besides Barbie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kevin is probably the only character that stands out, just because a lot of the story about it is like he likes Barbie, and that's a subplot. Him leaving notes. We know it's him, and it's just there. Yeah.
Now Barbie doesn't think they're from him. She thinks they're from Todd.
Todd, the Mr. Oblivious and social cues himself.
Yeah, he's too oblivious to function in this high school setting.
Not oblivious in a good way, but oblivious in like a Sherlock type of way.
Yeah. He's spineless and somewhat unaware of things around him. Like when Raquel tells him to break up with Barbie, he just does it because he doesn't have anything going on in his head beyond football.
And oh, pretty girl.
Yeah. He's just, and this is always the problem
He's shallow
with
as
this.
well, I guess.
Yeah. With these crush characters, the first crush in these movies who you know that the main character is not going to end up with them.
Especially if they do very early on in the film.
Yeah. And there's a way to sell this character, to make this character charming, before flipping it and being like, no, here's what's actually going on. But this movie doesn't even try to do that. Which, I mean, it isn't terrible that it is sort of being less subtle in this regard. But it means that the scenes with Todd and Barbie together feel kind of wasted. Now, he is one of the only characters in this movie who looks vaguely okay with the animation style. Now, maybe that's just because when they introduce him, I was just numb to the whole thing. Because he's one of the last major characters to be introduced.
Okay.
But, like, compared to everyone else in the movie, I think his character, his face fits his character model better.
Okay.
I don't know if I have
I'm
much of an
partial to
argument
Barbie,
add
but
that.
still. He fits the football jock, blonde guy
Yeah.
role very well. Even down to the green Letterman jacket.
Yep. Classic Letterman jacket.
It's Flash Thompson.
I mean, basically.
It's basically. But not as interesting a character.
Yeah. Now, I think where the movie also drops the ball here is that we have only one adult character.
2, 3.
Oh, yeah, there's the principal, but she has one scene.
And the teacher.
And the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Who...
But Mr. Wexler is the most important adult in this film.
Yeah. And teachers in teen movies, well, adults in general in teen movies are important because they provide perspective, especially for adult audiences watching these movies later. Now, obviously, this movie isn't really made with adults in mind, but there is this important sort of somewhat removed perspective that they provide that either makes the message clearer or the comedy funnier. And here we have one adult character who barely factors in and who is far too inconsistent to actually be interesting. And I don't know, I just really wish that we got to see, like, Barbie's parents. They never show up. Do they exist? We don't know. I assume so, but
I
movie
never even thought about them during the film.
Yeah, and I didn't either, but the parental relationship provides a very different kind of relationship for the main character to have.
Right, yeah.
And that relationship sort of highlights the different relationships around that and provides a different kind of support than the friendships can.
Raquel had a credit card.
Yeah.
She's a sophomore in high school and she has a credit card.
Which it's implied that Raquel especially is from a very wealthy family.
Did kids have cards back then?
Well, wealthy kids, I think, had cards back then.
Maybe. I don't know.
But like the kind of wealth of like you can spend a couple $100 and your parents don't notice wealth.
Okay.
That's what I get the sense. But even seeing her parents would be, I'm curious, what do Raquel's parents look like? Are they absent parents? Are they constantly away, not paying attention to her? Or are they like super doting and like, whatever you want, you're a little angel? Mm-hmm. Like that can bring so much context to the antagonist or the protagonist. Who are their parents? How do they relate? Because presumably they're living with their parents. So they spend hours of the day with their parents, or hours of the day with their parents absent.
Maybe it's a boarding school.
But they live off campus.
It's a really good boarding school.
I mean, it doesn't look like a
Barbie
cheap
cooks
school.
her own meals for the movie nights.
Yeah, and there's no like indication of anyone being around.
Right.
It's almost like, and a lot of these teen movies do end up falling into this where it's like this high school feels a lot like college. Not in terms of like the social dynamics, but in terms of how the characters, like especially Barbie in this movie, there's no indication that she's living with her parents beyond what we assume. She has like a part-time job at the school doing
Did someone have a car?
recording. Barbie has a car. Or maybe it's one of Barbie's friends. But yes,
someone drove a car at the beginning of the film. Who's driving a car? A sophomore in high school. You're at least a junior by the time you drive a car.
Yeah. A very bright pink car with leopard print seats. Sharpay from High School Musical would be proud.
Oh, but the leopard texture though. Oof.
Yeah.
Not well integrated.
Nope. Yeah, when Raquel calls the car ugly, I'm like, she's not wrong.
Like, the pink is nice, but that leopard, no.
Yeah.
The last major character of this film, Stephanie, the cashier who gives the magic necklace, who is super nice, very generous to the point that she gives the necklace and diary to the girls for Barbie for free. And it's an item that supposedly was supposed to come out soon. It's not even on shelves yet, so she's really being generous. And we find out she doesn't even exist, but Raquel knows her name.
I don't know if it's I think it's more of like a magic genie type situation.
But Raquel knows who she is.
Well, yeah, because she was working at the store when Raquel was checking out.
Yeah, but it seems like she goes there often enough that she knows Stephanie by name. So if Stephanie's not the one working there, who the heck is the cashier at that time? Are they gone? Are they at their lunch break? What's going on? This is one of the things where I feel like they started with the intention of having Stephanie be an actual character, but then near the end of the film they decide, oh, let's do a magic plot. And out of nowhere, they put in this thing. But they forgot that Raquel knew Stephanie's name. Which doesn't work. Like, that's guaranteed that's what happened. I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna bet it, okay?
Yeah, maybe they were editing the script and cut out one scene without cutting out the other.
Didn't even notice.
Yeah. I didn't notice that Raquel knew who Stephanie was, so... Apparently I wasn't paying nearly close enough attention.
Well, that's how I learned who Stephanie's name was. Because Raquel said Stephanie.
Oh yeah. Huh. That is an odd moment.
An odd moment.
Anyway, I gave the characters 2 out of 5.
I gave the characters 2 out of 5 as well.
Yeah. I think for me, Barbie is so interesting in this movie. But again, I can't really give the movie too much credit for it because it is borrowing pretty heavy from other arguably better movies.
Now on to the best part.
Yeah.
Today's episode.
The animation.
Oh boy.
Yeah. They were clearly going for a style.
Yes.
And it clearly isn't working.
No.
At all.
No.
The movement is often fine.
Right.
But the faces are nightmarish.
Yeah, like outside of Barbie, who looks okay. Ish. Everyone else, all the background characters, just don't fit.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many scenes where I'm not even looking at Barbie. I'm just looking at what's going on in the background. Because, like, the character designs are just so bland. And the movement... I don't know. Have you seen Ruby?
I've seen clips of Ruby.
It just reminds me of Ruby and their background characters, especially when they're first starting out. It just looked very similar. I'd even say that Ruby looks better, but they're still kind of similar. So yeah, background characters, big oof.
Now, it is worth noting that this is the first and only Barbie movie produced by this studio, Curious Pictures. And you
Right.
can tell.
Right. Barbie, you wouldn't really look at her and immediately think she's Barbie.
Yeah.
Like, the only time where I thought, oh, she looks like Barbie was when they were going to the fall and she had her hair tied up in a ponytail. That's when I thought, oh, she looks like Barbie there.
Yeah. The character designs look nothing like the dolls at all.
No.
Even like the backgrounds, the settings are just kind of dull. The animation is so bad that it drags everything else down. Because you
Yeah.
can never fully engage with the characters or the story.
There is one thing about there's a couple things about the animation that I noticed was a slight improvement over the other films, and that's the hair. The hair in the other films were just like one big mass with a little bit of texture. Here, there's more effort put into making the hair feel like more strands. It's still heavily textured, but it just looks like they're trying to do more with the hair. Even the way they animate the hair, it just feels more like hair,
Yeah.
which I gave it a plus for that. There are so many outfits in this film.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
So many outfits.
So many.
I actually like that. That there's so many outfits in almost every scene. There's a different outfit.
Yeah. In this way, I'm kind of reminded because when we started watching these movies, you were surprised that they started out with these princess movies
Mm.
because that's not necessarily what you associate with Barbie. So I think this movie is more what you would associate with Barbie, sort of this modern day, lots and lots of outfits, very of its time, charm bracelets.
Yeah. Also, something I've noticed is that the shadows in the characters look very interesting. Because it looks like an early form of cell shading. Because it doesn't look like your typical shadows. It looks like 2D shadows on their clothing, which looked interesting at times. It distracted me. It's like, huh, that's a odd way to do that, but okay.
Yeah, so this is from the Barbie wiki that this film is meant to have a toon shaded style.
Which is why I connected it to Ruby as well. Because Ruby has that 3D character model, but with 2D status to it.
Yeah.
And like that was my connection to this film, where it's like, it looks mostly 3D, but there's some elements that make it look more like 2D, specifically the shadows, which look cool, but they kind of don't always match or are too distracting at times.
Yeah, the lighting is so flat in every scene. Every scene looks like it is lit by just white light from every possible direction.
Except the clothing.
Except, yeah. It's baffling.
How about the transitions?
Yeah, I think there's some clever editing here.
Some, but most of them are just like Windows Movie Maker transitions.
Yeah, the Barbie, or not the Barbie, the butterfly that flies across the screen and reveals the next scene.
Yeah.
It's very TV.
Yeah, TV.
Like you could see that happening, and then like now we're back from commercial break.
Should be a show. Oh yeah, near the end of the film, where Raquel steals the bracelet. All those lockers have locks on them, yet the locks have served no purpose because you could just open them. She just opens it, and the lock is just there.
Now, I will say there are some interesting stylized moments in here that don't look great, but they look fine in comparison to everything around them. Barbie has several sort of like fantasy sequences imagining what she wants to be happening or what she fears is happening. That's where the lighting actually gets interesting and the colors like shift. And one of them I think is black and white, and the Barbie character model shrinks as like all of her peers are sort of gossiping about her. And I think those moments have good ideas. Whether the execution is great is kind of iffy. And then I do think it has some cool camera movements. There's one scene specifically where Barbie attends Todd's football practice, and the camera starts at one end of the field and then moves across the field as football practice is going on. And it's the kind of thing you can only really do in animation because you have so many moving parts going like right by the camera. But it's just like a cool moment. But unfortunately, the character models in that moment are just so misguidedly designed that I can't give it a very high score here. So for me, those moments are enough to bring it up half a point. So I gave this a total of 0.5 out of 5 points.
I gave it a 1.5 because I've seen worse looking stuff. But generally, what brings it up for me is just the effort put into trying to make the hair look better, trying to make the 2D on 3D look like something, even though they don't always work. There was an attempt, and I applaud them for trying.
Yeah. And I do too. I think, however, they missed the mark. And I honestly don't know that any of these Barbie movies, or at least I'm crossing my fingers, I think this might be the worst looking of the Barbie movies. So, with that in mind, I've kind of set the sort of this is, I'm hoping, the lowest I will ever go for an animation score, but we'll see.
We'll see. There's a lot of later films that we've not seen yet.
Yeah. Next up, we have the voice acting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have much to say here. It's probably one of the better aspects, but because of the animation, the voices feel mismatched to the character models.
Yeah, because especially for Reagan and Dawn, they both sound so similar that I couldn't tell who was who half the time. But yeah, standout voices for me. Kelly, once again, being Barbie, is playing a different type of character. She feels like the teenager instead of the normal Barbie that we've seen. So like I was happy to hear that she was doing something very different here. Kevin and Todd. Interesting thing. So, Kevin is played by Matt Hale. Todd is played by Andrew Francis. Both are another alums from My Little Pony. But when I was watching the film, I was hearing Kevin talk, and I'm thinking, Kevin kind of sounds like Andrew Francis. But he wasn't. But then I heard Todd talk, and it's like, oh, no, wait, that's Andrew Francis. And then I looked it up. It's like, they're both in ponies. Yes. Okay. That makes more sense. I was thinking of someone else. Another first for Pony alum in this film is Ashley Ball, who will become bigger in ponies. But she is also in a Canadian band called Hey Ocean, with some fun music. So if she does more Barbie stuff, I think she should be doing some music, hopefully.
Okay.
Because she's pretty talented. Yeah, we both gave the voice acting a 3.
Yep. It didn't stand out to me, but I don't want to bring it any lower because I know the reason it didn't stand out was in large part due to the animation.
Yeah, and plus, like, a lot of the characters have just very similar sounding voices because they're not going too cartoonish. They're just
Yeah.
being random teenagers, and teenagers don't always sound very different.
So last up we have the music, which I thought was pretty good.
The only thing I'd say that's not great about the music is the lip sync with the characters,
Yeah.
because it's implied that the characters are actually singing that, but they don't sound like the characters at all. And like,
Yeah.
not only that, the audio mixing is much lower for the songs that just don't work. It should be
Yeah.
louder, because you're singing louder. It's really weird.
Yeah. No, the songs themselves though I think work really well.
Very 2000s, for
Yeah,
sure.
specifically I think bringing on Sky Sweetnam, who was at this point an actual artist working in the sort of post-punk pop rock genre, it lends an authenticity to the music of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think, like, not to, like, I don't mean this as an insult, but she doesn't have like a personality that overpowers the Barbie character for those songs.
Mm-hmm.
Her voice
Oh,
is very distinct from Kelly Sheridan's, but the disconnect never took me out of the movie.
yeah, the music. It's not my style of music. I think if I were to re-listen to the songs again, especially the formal song, I think could be catchy.
Yeah.
But again, it's just not my style. And just
I have listened
the
to.
average score for the film is just okay. It's nothing
Yeah.
noticeable.
Yeah, the score itself, the background music isn't notable. I will say, personally, I do enjoy sort of not the specific music used in the movie. It's not exactly what I would listen to, but it is close. I do listen to a bit of that sort of 2000s post-punk rock and pop music. So I think it is good within that genre. I think where it really falters though is that there's some really bad scene to scene musical transitions where the the music and the scene fade out too close to each other and it makes the cut really evident because in editing, the way editing often works is that you want to have a little bit of sound from the last scene carry on into the next scene to make that transition a little bit smoother and make it a little less apparent. And here they do some of that with the music, but the way they faded it out and the timing of that just made it very jarring, at least to me, the switches between scenes and between music tracks.
Yeah, which almost seems like the track wasn't done for the full film. It was done per scene, and they just slapped them all together.
Yeah, and it is worth noting, because I didn't say it earlier. Oh, I did say it earlier. The soundtrack, we have Sky Sweetnam doing a lot of the songs, but not all of the songs. So it is possible that some songs were just Mattel gave the singer, like, this is what we want from the song, and the singer sang that song, and then they said, okay, here's the scene where it belongs, let's make sure it fits in there. And that was all of the effort that got put into it,
Yeah.
rather than trying to give the entire movie a consistency in its music.
Mm-hmm. I do wish that the band had a little more focus, because the opening of this film focuses heavily on the band.
Yeah.
but that's not really a focus until the end.
Yeah, it's another one of those subplots where I think either the band or the diary, if they
Mm.
had focused in more on one of those, it could have given this movie its own unique identity. But it's just juggling too many subplots. And as you suggested, maybe it would work better as a TV show where different episodes can focus on different things, as
Yeah,
opposed to a movie where it all fits together, but not particularly well. So yeah, I gave the movie or the music a 4 out of 5.
yeah, I gave it a 3, mainly because of the main score wasn't all that noticeable or impressive. But the band was, I will say, objectively, I think is nice, even though I'm not crazy about that style. So 3.
Yeah, it fits the identity of the movie.
Yeah, sure. The mixing also isn't great, but we both have the same score of 11.5.
Yep, our overall score is exactly the same here.
Yes, which is 46% and a 2.3 5-star rating. But personally, we might do lower.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think I'll have to see more of these Barbie movies, but particularly the animation feels like it's about rock bottom for what we can expect.
I mean, yeah, there are more rock bottoms.
Yes, obviously there's worse animation out there, but I think for these Barbie movies, I'm crossing my fingers that this is the worst it gets. Though, I mean, we could be surprised.
I mean, with just it's probably the worst we're gonna get with all the combination of many things being not great, including the animation. So
Yeah.
this is probably the lowest we're gonna get with a combination.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there are later movies that have lower story and character scores, but
But bigger
I think
animation.
animation we might have seen the worst of that.
Maybe.
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 So yeah, final thoughts. I mean, for me, it's like if you could either watch this movie or Mean Girls. And Mean Girls is better in every single way, and it also doesn't have bad animation.
Right.
So it kind of just feels like, especially looking at this retrospectively, it makes sense that Mattel has erased this from the internet being able to watch it
Right.
because it isn't serving much of a purpose
No.
besides sort of cheapening their brand with bad animation. It's not even like a Nutcracker where you have interesting ballet sequences, which, well, I wouldn't recommend anyone watch the Nutcracker movie. If someone has an interest in ballet, there's sequences in that movie that I think portray ballet in a very interesting way. Here, it's just kind of everything that this movie does well, other movies do better, and everything that this movie does poorly, other movies also do better.
I mean, it wasn't as bad as I thought going into it, but it's not great. It was a nice flashback to the 2000s, but
Well, thank you everyone for listening. Make sure to follow us on social media. We are Binging Barbie Podcast on Instagram, at Binging Barbie on Twitter, and Binging Barbie, a Barbie movie podcast on Letterboxd.
yeah.
There you can find an up-to-date list of all of our Barbie movie rankings. If you are curious where this one falls, we've kind of made it pretty clear that it's at the bottom for now.
Yeah.
But be sure to check that out and see if you agree with us, and join us next week for a discussion of the beloved Barbie classic, Barbie in the 12 Dancing Princesses.
So go out and swallow live iguanas.